Welcome to Noble Warrior. My name is CK Lin. Noble Warrior is where I interview multi-dimensional entrepreneurs about their spiritual discipline. We'll deconstruct their mindset, mental models, actionable tactics, so you can go out and take them and engineer your life with more impact and fulfillment. If you have other entrepreneur friends who could use more inspiration, and especially more actionable tactics around gaining and deepening an experience of love, please share this episode with them. They'll thank you for it. My next guest is Alison Armstrong. She's the founder of PAX Programs Incorporated. She's best known for her Understanding Man course, the Queen's Code book, and her In Sync with the Opposite Sex audio program. Alison has dedicated the last 30 years of her life giving millions of people access to more fulfilling lives, loving relationships, stronger families, and productive organizations. We talked about her origin story, what compelled her to jump into this work in the first place, the what if question that saved her life, and why she loves archetypes and the limitations of archetypes, and why freedom is her highest value and how she maximizes her value. The three components that she used to deepen our experience of love. And what are the 6 hidden dominant drivers that drive our choices? The 2 things you need to get more of what you want as a receiver in a relationship. And finally, how do you clarify what you need as a human being at the deepest level? Please enjoy my conversation with Alison Armstrong. Alison Armstrong,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for being here. I am so excited. I want to actually give you a real quick personal acknowledgement. The work
Okay.
that you have done, I just so appreciate. I love the fact that you emphasize over and over again that men are not unevolved women. We're not hairy women. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing broken with any of us, really, not just men, but also men and women. And I
Mhm.
love the specific takeaway from the work that you've done is you demonstrated to me where you asked people to raise their hand when they felt physically compromised about their safety. And that was very eye-opening for me when I saw that. I was like, wow, I personally, as a man, never worry about physical safety when I go out. But even more than the content itself, what I felt is this deep place of empathy and compassion. And I felt understood by someone with the linguistic skills that I didn't have to articulate what's really going on in my mind. So I
Mm.
so appreciate the work that you do, Allison.
Thank you. And you're welcome. You're very welcome.
So you had said it many, many times. You started from a place of being a frog farmer. Can you unpack that just a bit for people who are not familiar with the story of Alison Armstrong? Just a short 1 minute, 2 minute
A
version of frog
one-minute
farmer.
version of it. Well, it's elaborated on in the Queen's Code. Kimberly goes through it. It really happened to me. 30 years ago this month, a friend of mine was called a frog farmer. After she asked, why is it that men are really wonderful in the beginning and then turn into sports watching, pizza eating, beer belching, couch slugs? And she asked that in front of a couple hundred people, and she was called a frog farmer, which is a woman who, instead of turning frogs into princes, turns princes into frogs. And she completely repelled the concept, and I loved it because I've been fascinated by cause and effect for a long time. I've been fascinated by how many things in our lives we struggle with because of what I call false cause. We assign false cause. And so we're working on something that isn't actually happening. And which is what I've been doing with men for a very long time. I've been working on something that wasn't actually happening. And so it wasn't effective. An idea that I could be doing something that was bringing out the worst in men was very exciting to me because I knew I could change my behavior, right? I'd been
Mm,
involved in transformation at that point for 11 years,
mm,
right? I started when I was 19 years old. And and I knew I could transform myself, right? I failed at changing anybody else. So the idea that if I could discover what I was doing that brought out the worst in men, which I had no idea what it was because I was so normal, right? I didn't have any reflection of something different, right? So I didn't have any reason to believe that men were different than women believe men are, right? Until this comment. And so that was exciting to me. And I started with the question, what if men are responding to women?
Mm.
And I'm stoked. I really don't know where these questions come from. You mentioned spirituality earlier, but that question saved me because I didn't try to prove that men were responding to women. And I didn't try to prove that you weren't. I just was like, what if? And so I learned all these ways that men are responding to a woman directly, to what she said, what she did, the look on her face, the information she provided or didn't provide. But I also found out all these ways that men are not responding to women. And, CK, you know this, you guys have a saying, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And he'd actually be ashamed if he were responding to a woman, right? That he's got to do the right thing no matter how he feels. So he's got to do the right thing no matter if he loves her. He's got to do the right thing no matter if he's mad at her. He's got to do the right thing whether he wants to, get as far away from her as possible. He's going to do the right thing whether it has anything to do with her or not. And so one of the biggest revelations, and I'll stop, you can talk about them as you want, but mostly women have it backwards. We think you're responding to us when you're not, and we think you're not responding to us when you are.
So I want to actually jump ahead a little bit, not necessarily segue from where you were.
Yeah.
I know that you focus a lot on archetypes, especially a book that was seminal to me, The Amazing Development of Men, where you focus on archetypes a lot. I'm very curious to know, when you make things into archetypes, now it's hierarchical, right? From page to prince to king and so forth. Now the perception is it's better to be a king than a prince than a page. Could you speak a little bit about the use of archetypes and potentially the limitation of archetypes? I personally love archetypes, but I'm curious to know your thought.
Well, it's interesting. I've never thought of them as hierarchical. So when you just said that, I'm like, what? A king's better than a prince? Oh my gosh, they're so different. There's advantages and disadvantages, right? Pages, oh my gosh, pages, amazing. So I actually haven't thought of it as hierarchical any more than getting older ought to be hierarchical. Someone could get older but be no more than they were before, right? So the stages of development were exciting for me just as a way of making sense of what if there's a good reason for everything men do? What if there's a good reason for everything men are compelled by? And then later on, as I wanted to understand women better, because what men were telling me about women, I didn't understand. I'd never seen what men showed me in women. And women, again, it can be listened to as hierarchical, the temptress, the mother, and the queen. But no, every woman has the capacity to be all three of them. And we're actually the most powerful when we have access to all three of them, when they're in partnership with each other. So, and then, I like archetypes because they connect with us. Like I have another set of archetypes I call it monarchs, pirates, gamblers, and prostitutes. And they're archetypes of fundamental ways of relating to interactions with other people. And it affects our relationships with money, affection, sex, working with other people, all kinds of things. So I love them just because they help to crystallize for the brain. And the brain learns by the perception of a difference. So the more we can distinguish something, separate it, then the brain can grab it, and then it can actually see the room in between, right? But you have to pull it apart to be able to see it. In neuroscience, they would call it exaggeration. But once you pull it apart so someone can see it, then you can really deal with nuances in between. But until you pulled it apart, you're pretty much ineffective.
I really, I mean, I'm for sure 100% aligned, and then I really appreciated how you articulated it, because in my mind, we have all of the archetypes. We can access any of the archetypes at any given time, and it's really have access, really equal access. If the situation calls for a king, king shows up. A warrior, warrior shows up. Versus, I have to be a warrior at all times, and that's very, very limiting. That's the way I think about it. So appreciate it.
Yeah, my highest value is freedom. And in my observation, people's highest value is the thing that for them gives them access to all the goodies, right? And freedom means the power to choose. So the power to choose, oh, this is a warrior moment, right? Which is all about protecting. Or this is a king moment, which is all about providing, right? Versus this is an elder moment, which is all about being a resource. So you're a provider, but you don't push yourself on other people, right? To be able to choose those moments, which only comes from choosing to be present, the hardest thing for human beings. So I appreciated it. The box breathing before we started. That was awesome.
Thank you. So I'm curious to know, because as surface level glance, one may say, "Oh, Alison Armstrong, that it's boxing me into a archetype per se, right?" Versus we delving into your work, and now like, oh wow, there's actually a lot of nuance and possibility with it. So how do you respond to someone who says, "I'm infinite possibilities. Don't box me into your patriarchal or stereotypes. Looking at men and women and what we're supposed to do, or the evolution biological blah blah blah." How would you respond to that?
Well, I very rarely get said something like that. I'm usually the one, like I have people who will talk to me about the patriarchy, right? So, Hana, the patriarchy. Excuse me, but I've never met a patriarchy. What are you talking about? As I can tell, the more I've studied the men, the more I've seen how much men are compelled to serve, right? Much more compelled to serve than to be served. And I think if we looked like at our society, if people weren't, see, how would I say this? So what people tend to do, right, is there's this possibility, right? Something really beautiful. And we measure ourselves against that possibility, that the gap is what's wrong, right? And that happens a lot with, say, women and equality in the workplace. We measure against this idealism. If we measured against a little over 100 years ago, women were considered too stupid to learn to type. Honestly, if we measured against being property, to owning property, to generating wealth, if we measured against what we were thought of capable as doing, to how many women are given leadership positions in corporations by men. They're given them by men because all the men really care about is results and being effective, and they don't care whether you have an innie or an outie. Like if we were really paying attention to what's happened, we would call it a revolution. We would go, holy moly, look what's happened in the last 50 years, instead of look what hasn't happened and what it should be. So it's pretty funny. I mean, the same thing with masculine and feminine. I gave up using those words because they're so laden with right and wrong and objectification and the idea that we're fixed. And my work in horsemanship, which has been a great aspect, a great access for me to partnership, is all about having an infinite ability to respond. At every moment, I want an infinite ability to respond. And if you understand, if you can see what compels you in the first place, which is not responding, being compelled is no choice. If you're unaware of what you're compelled by, like the instinct to protect or the instinct to provide or the instinct to create, if you're unaware of how much you're compelled, then you'll never have an infinite ability to respond. Because that infinite ability shows up in the moment of awareness. I'm compelled. I could choose something else. And most people aren't even ever aware that they're compelled.
So I want to follow up with that thought. Hit a pause on that real quick. Tactical question. Tactical question. Okay, because we're definitely aligned. It's all about. In my mind, when I talk about masculine and feminine, I'm not talking about gender. I'm talking about the energetics, right? The tendency of it.
Yes.
The language itself is so laden with a lot of the historical context that I didn't really need to carry. So a little coaching for me. If not using those terms to describe the polarities, what do you use? Because words are so limiting. I need to say something point to that, right? How do you is it hunter gatherer? Is that where you can go to now, or what do you say?
I went from masculine and feminine to hunter and gatherer, and then immediately people, he's such a hunter, she's such a hunter, right? She's such a gatherer. Again, objectification. So mostly I traffic in ing words now, which are states of being, thinking, processing, right? So they're active, they're fluid. So are you in hunting mode? Are you in gathering mode? Are you in a mental state of commitment, right? You're in a committed state of mind, which is going to actually change the way that you perceive and process and speak and listen and everything. Or are you in an open state of mind, a connective state of mind, right? Are you about, in this moment, are you about productivity or connectivity? Right? So more fluid, more active, more indicating how changeable we are, and that it's also it's not just our state of mind. Like our state of mind affects literally our state of biology, right? We affect our own hormones with our thoughts, and then our hormones affect our thoughts. So that can be in a downward spiral, or it can be in an upward spiral. It can be in partnership, or it can be antagonistic. So I'm always dealing more in paradigms, if you will, than the false sense of certainty that labeling gives people. Right?
I love that.
We're compelled to label things because it makes us feel like we have it literally a handle, right? A label's a handle. Okay, I got a handle on that, right? And it's a false sense of certainty, and it makes us less effective. While feeling like we'll be more effective, we're actually less effective.
So instead of going for quote unquote efficiency, like let me give you a handle, let me give you a title, let me give you identity, you can call you that, really literally, well maybe metaphorically box you in, or literally.
It does.
Instead of doing that, focus on the ever shifting state, the ing. What are you inging in this moment, a way of being this moment as the situation arises.
Near as I can tell, the only things that we really can control, like have a say in, have a choice in, which are the only things actually happening with ourselves and between us and other people, are how are we being, how are we listening, and how are we speaking. Those three things. And of those three things, most people pay the most attention to speaking. What should I say? How should I say it? When how we listen is so much more important than how we're speaking. And how we're being, it communicates way more than anything we ever say. Being is actually the universal language. And when how someone's being doesn't agree with how they're speaking, people will only choose the speaking when they're words they're hoping to hear.
Mm.
Right? And they'll ignore the being that's telling them this is incongruent. This is incongruent.
So I want to make it practical. We'll get to the practical
Yeah,
applications of this in just a moment. But I want to segue to this thing that you had drawn in one of your other podcasts. It was a downward spiral. You had talked about the evolution biological mindset, hunting versus gathering, right? Gender, and then its instincts, procreate, protect, and provide.
yes.
You prefer this over the identity level beliefs or the circumstances, cause and effect. So I'm curious to know, why is it empirical? Is it like based on tens of thousands of people that you coached, the biological mindset, hunter gathering, and then the instincts dominate a whole lot more than identity level beliefs or the cause and effect based on circumstances?
Mm.
Curious to know your thoughts on that.
Well, a man named Brian Regnier, who a, a, a largely unknown titan in transformation. Um, I
I know,
got
wisdom
to.
course.
It was, of course, very good. Yes.
Yeah.
So I got to be in the original wisdom course, the very
Mm,
first exploration one, and then the second one.
mm,
And what Brian said in that first course was, if you're struggling with something, you may be trying to solve it at a level that's different than the level it's actually happening at.
mm,
And this is what I mean by false cause. So most people are trying to solve their relationship issues, right? Both words are problematic. They're trying to solve them at the level of individual, at the level of my personality, my sun sign, my history, right? My birth order, my ethnicity, my religion, my socioeconomic status. We try to solve it as all these things that I might say are true about me.
mm,
But in interacting, geez, I mean, it's been 30 years, more than 40 years of transformation, right? 30 years since I started studying men. They'll ask me a question. So why would a man blah, blah, blah? I actually can answer the question after that. But then they're compelled to tell me the situation, the 30-year history, not necessary, because it had nothing to do with the situation, nothing to do with the history. It has to do with exactly why every man would do that, right?
mm.
Nearly every man would do that, right? And so it's just we it's just something to take on. What if anything you're struggling with, you're working on it at a level that it isn't happening yet? May I share something with you?
Please, of course.
So about 15 years ago, I'll save you the backstory. I took on letting go of everything that isn't love.
Mm,
And every birthday I recommitted to it. And usually about a month before my birthday, I get a preview of what am I going to have to stick my face in for the next year. Not pretty.
mm,
Greed, despair, anger, um, oh my gosh, pride, arrogance. I could just go on, right? And this last year in October, my birthday is, what came to me very clearly was let go of everything that isn't love, especially for yourself.
mm.
Ugh, that was worse than any of them,
Let
right?
go of everything that isn't love, especially for yourself. As in,
Yeah,
let go of
like
anything that
me.
isn't self-love. Is that true?
Yeah, like let go of everything that isn't love, especially for myself.
Mm,
And the the first place to go to, right, especially as a woman, would be feeling love for myself,
mm,
right? How do I have a feeling of love for me? Well, fortunately, I paid a lot of attention to love, which talk about infinite, right? What if love is infinite and eternal? And so it's not personal. Love is not personal at all. But my personal experience of love, like this space, how big the space is that I have to experience love, what determines how much love I experience. And I've been working on this for a really long time. And my assertion is that it has to do with respect, admiration, and affinity.
Mm,
Affinity is to like somebody, right? So the more respect you have for someone, then your experience of love for them is going to grow. The more admiration, your experience of love for them, it's going to feel bigger, right? The more you like them, like you just prefer how that person is. That's so cool how they handle that, right? The more you like them, your experience of love is going to grow. And then when they do things that cause you to lose respect, it
mm,
shrinks. Cause you to lose admiration, it shrinks. Cause you to, I don't like that. I don't like them. It shrinks. Well, what if it's just that simple? Well, fortunately, when given the assignment, especially for myself, that was right there available to me. Oh, if I'm going to let go of everything that isn't love, especially for myself, I need to stop doing the things that cost me respect for myself.
mm,
Stop doing the things that cost me admiration for myself. Stop doing the things that cost me liking myself. I got to stop doing those. I have to cut it out. I can't entertain them anymore. And I need to do more of the things that expand respect, admiration, and affinity for myself. And literally, CK, this is what has me go out in one digit weather, right? Like 3 degrees out. Bundle up, go out in 3 degrees in the dark, maybe snowing, and give my horse her pain medicine.
mm,
Because if I don't, I lose respect for myself.
mm,
If I do, I'm like, yes, I'm that person. Something as simple as that I've struggled with for years. She's been on this medicine for like 3 years. Almost every night. No, I just want to go to sleep. I just want to go to sleep, right? No, I just cut it out
mm,
because I didn't realize how much it was eating away at my own respect for myself. I was ashamed of myself that I'd let my horse go through the night in pain.
mm,
So you wanted to get practical, right? That's a way to get practical. What
mm.
are the things that we do that cost us respect, admiration, and affinity for ourselves? Which, by the way, CK, the more we put up with that in us, the 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 more we put up with it in other people. The
Mm,
more we don't, we, we literally put up with. Brian Ranger said this too. Like what kills relationships? He said putting up with things you can't tolerate.
mm,
And I thought put up with and tolerate meant the same thing. And then I looked up tolerance, and it said the ability to be with without any loss of respect, admiration, or affinity. Oh, that's why in Los Angeles it's the Museum of Tolerance, not the Museum of Putting Up With, right?
yes.
so, what are we putting up with in ourselves or in other people that's costing respect, admiration, or affinity for them or for us? You start interacting at that level instead of personality or justification. It's because, remember his upbringing, remember the culture he comes from, remember like all these things that we use to justify people being not the best people they could be. We can have compassion for what causes us to not be that, but I think it's disrespectful to settle for it, to think that little of you or to think that little of me.
So let me recap real quick, then I'll ask a follow-up
Ooh,
question. That's my
please
style
share.
over here on this podcast, okay? So what you're
I
saying
love
is
how you do that, by the way. It's awesome. It's such a good setup. Thank you.
thank you. So what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, let me reinterpret of what you're saying is every time you take on that way of being, you gain respect to yourself, or in landmark would be you honor your word to yourself first and foremost. You show up that way, then you're at a much quote unquote better space to engage with another. Is that roughly what you said? Is that accurate, or did I totally mess it up?
Um, honoring your word is awesome. Uh, for many people, just giving their word would be a breakthrough. So many people won't commit, won't promise anything because of the risk of failing. And I mean, it's a whole topic we could have. That the source of my ability to do what I do is because I became a failure when I was 28 years old. That's a whole other topic. And most human beings are driven by not failing, to succeed and not fail, to live and not die. And that's why we're easy to manipulate. So yes, give your word, keep your word. You know, as you can tell, I was profoundly influenced by the group of people that came out of what was called Mind Dynamics, and who started Psi and
Mm,
S and LifeSpring,
mm.
and I, you know, one of my favorite things, CK, was something Earhart said, which was he talked about how we use words, right? And language is so important. And most people use words in a way that I'm really good at, which is what you would call a word to world match. So to feel
Word to world match. Okay.
a word to world match, how accurately can you describe your own experience? How accurately can you describe the world that you live in, the world that someone else lives in? So, you know, the last 30 years have been a word to world match, a man's world, a woman's world, a producer's world, a connector's world, right? Like how accurately can I describe the experience of men and women in relationship? And it's what has people say, have you been following me around, right? Because I have a word to world match that I'm very precise about. My boyfriend calls me Priscilla. It's like, okay, Priscilla. Right? So I'm very precise in this word to world match. But the thing um, that Werner Erhard challenged us to was a world to word match. That if you give your word and you do everything it takes to have the world match what you said, then your word actually becomes a creative act.
Mm.
That's what I've been doing for so long, is speaking that which is I say is possible, and then doing everything to cause it to go from possibility to real.
So, quick question about that, because
Yeah.
we started from what is anything that's not love? What was it? What
Yeah.
if love?
Letting go of everything that isn't love.
Thank you, especially for myself, right? That's the place where it started.
Yes, that was
So,
my 60th birthday challenge, especially for myself.
amazing. So the question I have is this: so if we love ourselves infinitely, why the effort to be cognizant about anything that's not our highest self? Because I get this question a lot, right? Hey, CK, you're thinking about this way too much. Just enjoy life, forget about all this inquiry and philosophizing and then quote unquote the work, doing the work, right? Ayahuasca, all these type of things. And frankly, honestly, I thought about that a lot. Frankly, I do it because I enjoy it. I like it. That's why I do it. So I'm curious to know from your perspective, as a seeker, as a teacher, as a philosopher in your own right, how do you reconcile this desire to do quote unquote work? Curious.
Well, I would challenge where you began with, if we love ourselves infinitely.
Mm,
Uh, I would assert we're a duality, right? It's in our biology, it's in our brains. We have two different nervous systems, right? One that's all about survival, and one that's all about something way beyond survival. And what you said about you do what you do, frankly, because you enjoy it, We were talking about archetypes before, right? And I used to have a set of archetypes that were objectifications that now we speak about in terms of ways of being. We call them your hidden dominant drivers, right? So are you most compelled by building, by enjoying, by expressing, by sharing with other people, by growing and becoming, or by knowing and acquiring knowledge, right? So 6 different archetypes.
Mm.
And we start with people looking at what do they spend most of their time doing, right? So what are they doing? What are they spending their money on, their time on, their energy on? What are they doing? And they'll think they found their archetype. But then the question is, why? All those things you're doing, why are you doing them? What are they for? What is the inherent good? What's in service to what? So I always thought I was a builder, right? I'm a build together with people I enjoy. No,
No.
everything I do serves expressing the messages that come through me, the truths that I perceive, the constellations my brain makes out of a starry sky, everything I've ever spent time building, and I've spent my whole life doing it, and all my money and all my time, right? It's always in order that something be expressed. And so the what for is really important, right? Do you grow ultimately so that you're enjoying life? And enjoying is often thought of as like frivolous. But if you look at enjoy, living in joy, bringing joy to grief, bringing joy to death, bringing joy to boredom, bringing joy to the mundane, thank goodness for people who are driven by enjoying. There's a lot of trash that actually gets picked up in life in all contexts for the purpose of being able to live in joy. So you go, CK.
You go, Allison. You as well. So, recently I had a family member who passed. So this, what you just said, is very poignant to me, especially in this moment. So I'm looking at the time. I can literally talk to you for hours, but since the time is so limited, I want to ask you 2 questions. Okay.
Sure.
One important aspect that you had talked about is honoring ourselves, right? You had, and I'm quoting you, we treat people like how we treat ourselves. When we know how to honor ourselves, we can then teach others how to honor us. Do you want to say something about that?
Well, I don't think I said we treat people the way I treat ourselves.
Okay,
We teach people how to treat us
got it.
by how we treat ourselves. So the whole phrase is honor yourself first or all is lost.
Mm,
And the reason being that you won't ever let anybody treat you better than you treat yourself. You won't let them. You won't be able to receive it because you'll be afraid of what obligation it will cause you to have to them. If they're treating you better than you would treat yourself, you now owe them something. If you're not modeling how to respect you, then they don't know how to respect you. They're going to project onto you, and they'll show you respect probably the way they want to be shown respect. And this causes a lot of problems, especially with opposing instincts, right? The most common being that when a woman is upset, a man out of care and respect will leave her alone.
yes,
And
I do that. Yes,
yes,
yes.
huge mistake.
Huge mistake. Yes.
Yes. And then out of love and care, when a man's upset, a woman will pet him. She'll come to him. She'll follow him. She'll track him down to take care of him. So the opposite is what we give what we need. So men want to be left alone, handle it themselves, recover themselves, come back a better person. A woman needs help. Come, throw me the lifeline.
Mm,
So yeah, so if we're not modeling this is how to respect me. This is how to give me what I need. This is how to take care of me. Then no one knows how to do it. And this goes back to respect, admiration, affinity. We mostly make ourselves unbelievable. Like a woman will say that she's tired. And so if she lives with a man, he'll be like, okay, so honey, go to bed. And she doesn't go to bed. I'll take care of the kids. You go to bed. And then she doesn't go to bed. So if we don't honor our word, is the way you would say it, if we don't say what we need and then protect what we need, we become unbelievable that we don't really need that. So why should I go out of my way to give you what you need when you don't give me what you need? It must not be real. You must not mean it. So is that enough on that? Is that what you were asking for?
Oh, no, this is great. So I want to cite some example that you gave that I thought was super awesome because I like practical, like tactical advice. I
Yes.
love the example you gave for your daughter for giving to cultivating this sense of self-love. I own that. I own it. I acknowledge it and say it in your head or write it out. That was super tactical. Is there anything you else want to say about that in terms of cultivating this self-honoring?
Well, I would say clarity is king. And one of the biggest things that will mess us up is the difference between an expectation and a need. And expect things that we need that we expect, things that we need that we don't expect, things that we expect that we don't actually need, things we expect that we do need. And mostly relationships are based on expectations. And how well are we fulfilling the other person's expectations without ever having to say what they are, right? And how well are they fulfilling ours without us ever having to say it? Because that's the nature of an expectation. It's something that should happen without me having to do anything about it. And this is what it's a killer. And it's the same thing with ourselves. We have expectations of ourselves, and whether we're failing at our own expectations is going to have a lot to do with our affinity for ourselves, right? But have we really sat down and gone, where did that expectation come from? Am I going to own it? Am I going to claim it, right? Or is that what I would call dog hair and foxtails, right? You sit down on a couch and you stand up with dog hair all over your end. Did you intend that? Did you choose that? You walk through a meadow and you come home with a sock full of foxtails, and they could work their way into your bloodstream and all the way to your heart. Did you intend that? So examining everything we think should happen, everything someone else should be, everything I should be. Wait a second, am I going to own it or am I going to release it?
How do you release it?
Well, I use the Sedona methods. I don't know if you're familiar with.
I'm personally, I know of it. I'm not personally familiar with the process itself.
Oh my gosh, it is Lester Levinson, who created the first Sedona method, and then Hale Dwoskin, who's carried on the legacy and blown it up like crazy. He's one of my heroes. It's one of the quickest, most effortless, effective ways of restoring yourself that I've ever met. And I am huge on restoring yourself. And it operates on the principle that what you resist persists, which is, basic tenet of transformation. What you resist persists. And so instead of resisting, you welcome. Could you welcome? So I have a friend, powerful pain in his shoulders from his neck. And I just taught him welcoming. And he was stunned, right? Because he spent so much time enduring, resisting this pain. I invited him just to welcome it every time it showed up. Assume it's a new pain, not still there. It's just a new pain, a new pain. Welcome, 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 welcome. instantly transformed his experience of life and how much energy he had. He just kept welcoming the pain. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hale Dwoskin has tinnitus. Most people would go crazy with a constant ringing in their ears.
Yeah.
He just goes welcoming it. He spends no energy on it. He just welcomes, welcomes, welcomes. So, yeah, it's powerful stuff. I encourage everybody. I have Hale's permission to teach the Sedona methods in any training I ever do.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and they're incorporated in our online curriculum. We have Sedona method stuff in there. So
yeah, definitely, guys. In case you haven't received it enough yet, Alison's definitely the real deal. Definitely go to understandman.com, check out her work. I wanted to give some other practical analogy that you gave, which I really love. You said that the job of a provider and a receiver, it is the receiver's job to be clear about what they want and show appreciation in the other person's currency when receiving. Now, I love particularly the example you gave. You say you held your late husband's hand in two places where I want acknowledgement for this, this, and this. And here's how you acknowledge me. And I was like, as a man, as someone who loves to actually see results, that's just like mwah, gold.
yeah.
Thank you for
So
that.
we
Is
call
there
it
anything to add?
a credit tour. I get a credit tour. To take him around, hold him by the hand, take him around and show him everything I had done. Everything I cleaned, everything I fixed, everything I made more beautiful. And he would notice it, go, oh yeah. And then that was it on appreciation. Yeah, providing and receiving is one of my favorite topics in terms of upward spirals that can also be down into the sewer. That the person who needs or wants something, I'm not so big on wants, it just means lack. And it's very much based in survival. Whereas a need has a huge cost to not having met and a huge benefit to having met, like sleep, for example, right? Huge cost, huge benefit in who we are being, right? So the person who has a need, they're the receiver, and their job is to be clear about what the need is. And then the hard part is to release to the provider how they provide it. Because too much, we'll hold on to both. So if I need something from you, CK, but I can't figure out how you'll provide it for me, like where would you ever find the time, or how would you ever have the energy, or for sure you don't have enough money for that, I may never tell you. I may never tell you I need it. And that's actually one of the ways that we emasculate, which we define as diminishing a person's ability to produce results. So if I haven't even told you I need it, I've just diminished your ability to produce that result for me, right? And if I haven't told you I need it because I can't figure out how you would provide it, well, I've also done something else that's emasculating. I have withheld a problem, right? And any provider, we're natural problem solvers, right? Like, give me a problem, yeah, let me solve that. And we withhold problems instead of just saying, this is the problem, stating the problem. What is the problem? You guys so want us to just tell you what the problem is. You're listening for it, and the problem is,
Yeah.
and the problem is, and we won't tell you, right?
Yes.
But if we're like, what is the problem? What is the need? What do we need to start happening? What do we need to stop happening? What? And then that's your job. Be clear about that. And then turn it over to the person you're asking it from. And then they can go to work on how they would give that to you, which one of the most disrespectful things we do to other people is we try to make a plan for them. But it's the other reason why honor yourself first or all is lost. You have at least 1,000 times more information about you, CK, than I will ever have, no matter how well I know you. I won't know how much energy you have in your body right now, how much worry you have in your head right now, what you're distracted by, what you're focused on. I'll never know what you know about you. So if you're not honoring you, all is lost. I don't have a chance. I'm guessing all the time.
I
And vice
think
versa.
that's part of the biggest frustration of being a partner with someone else, because oftentimes the other person really doesn't know what he or she wants ultimately. So therefore, expecting me to provide that for them, it's blind leading the blind. It's very frustrating. So for someone who is needs a little clarity, do you have any specific process to help them clarify what is it that they need?
Yeah, I do actually. And it's this is perfect. It's right around. So it starts with being.
Mm,
So what are the qualities of being that you want to bring to this situation, this moment, this date, this evening, to grieving, to accomplishment? What are the qualities of being in this situation? Okay, so you can prepare yourself for something. You can maintain states of being. You can restore yourself to states of being. So how do you want to be? Do you
mm,
want to be generous, grateful, peaceful, joyful, focused, articulate,
mhm,
intense, um, calm? How do you want to be? And this is that world to word match. Like we can actually pick states of being that may seem difficult or even impossible to us, and reverse engineer them.
mm,
And the trick of being is embodiment. So we will we will be naturally anything we've embodied. So the best states of being are in a state of overflow. When you're so full of love, you're
mm.
so full of patience, you're so full of peace, compassion, right? That you're overflowing in joy. So what are these states of being that you want to overflow as?
Mm.
And then you ask yourself the question, okay, so when am I naturally that way? Or a really effective question I've been working on for the last year or so is, okay, what is it in my life that when I do that, it leaves me with the feeling of? Because that's how you know you've embodied something, because you feel
Wait,
it.
wait, back up one sentence? You lost me for one sentence. One more time?
Yeah, what leaves me with the feeling of? So fill in the blank. What leaves me with the feeling of compassion, the feeling of love, the feeling of joy? And one of the biggest myths, CK, about men is that you guys don't feel, or you don't have deep feelings, or you're not in touch with your feelings. You're,
Yep, received
you're
that a lot. Yes,
it,
for sure.
it is baloney. You don't reveal your feelings because you're used to them being used against you. So you're really smart about it, right?
Mm,
But the depth of feeling, I've come to the conclusion that men often feel even more intensely than women do. And that you're like blow my mind intensity. And so what leaves you with the feeling of it? Is it sleep? Is it taking your body to an extreme? Is a 100-mile bicycle ride? Is it an adventure? Is it making love? Is it time alone in nature? What leaves you with the feeling of the ways of being that you're committed to?
mm,
And then those are needs. Those are the things you need to be the person you're committed to being. And
mm.
if you're really committed to being it, then what you do is you protect those needs like crazy, and you provide them for yourself, and you ask other people for them.
Mm,
But
mm.
you can oh boy, there's a thousand things we could say, but we usually go fishing for what we need. We don't commit to what we need
Mm,
before we ask another person to commit. And
mhm.
how you'll know you're committed to what you need, because you're committed to a state of being, is you'll have a backup plan if they can't provide it to you. If they're unable and willing to provide it, you have a backup.
Beautiful. I'm looking at the time, oh man, I can't believe an hour has passed already. Holy shit. And in honoring my promise to you, get you off the hook, on a timely basis, I literally can talk to you for hours, seriously.
Yes,
But
we could.
I wanna really acknowledge you, for Allison, for the body of work that you've done. You know, my grandma just passed, so I'm freshly reminded in the finality of life and just like so much that you have produced, and you know, the ripple effect continues. Every single person in my circle heard about. I'm about to do a conversation with you. There was just like, I love Alison Armstrong. I just love you. And then thank you for the work that you do to really helping not only men and women heal, self-honoring themselves, but also cultivating the facility, the capacity to produce a very synergistic, productive relationship for their family, for the company that they do. So, Allison, you are a gem. I just so appreciate you. I hope that we get to do this part two sometime in the future. So, just
Yeah,
really honor you. Thank
okay.
you so much.
Very great. Very great.